Yeah, let's welcome Owen. He's the founder and CEO of Bitroots, and he's going to talk about the climate impact and opportunity of Bitcoin mining. So let's hear it.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. So just to give you a background about me. So I did the PhD in maths, a few years as a postdoc, and then I moved to industry. Spent the last 7 years working for a company called Enchain. They do R&D in Bitcoin. They're based just down the road in Oxford Circus. And we've actually taken interns from UCL before and have a relationship with a few people here. Not at the moment, though, unfortunately, but there's a strong connection between the various groups here at UCL and some of the places I've been. 8 months ago, I left. I founded a company called Bitroots, which is everything that in this presentation is about Bitroots. So it's a bit of a startup pitch. So it might have a bit of a different feel to usual, but maybe that's interesting as well. Right now, I'm currently doing a residency with a accelerator called Antler, where I've just come from today. So that's quite good. They do lots of workshops. They try and put you in contact with investors and things like that. And yeah, please, you can follow us on our website, bitroots.io, or LinkedIn. I'd be very grateful if you could follow us. Okay, so everything I talk about today is going to be about Bitcoin. So the original Bitcoin, BTC, but kind of from maybe a perspective you're not so used to, which is more like an energy perspective. So I'm going to start with energy. So just let's forget about cryptocurrency completely right now. Okay, and I'm going to start with a little thought experiment. So you've just built a hydroelectric dam. Here it is, called Amphitheatre. But the problem is it's too late. It's 8 years too late, like they always are. And it's over budget. It's 3 times over budget. And in the country where we built this, the grid is very fragmented. So the people you want to provide electricity to can't get the connection. And because it's so late, all the companies that agreed to buy your energy are now not there anymore. So what do? You're faced with this problem. And of course, this isn't a hypothetical problem. This actually happened recently in Ethiopia. So this is the Grand Renaissance Dam. You might not have heard of it, but it's the biggest dam in Africa. It's just been built. It's now operational, producing twice as much electricity as the country will ever need. And this isn't an isolated example. This is very typical of hydroelectric dams. They're big infrastructure projects. When they're done, they generate a huge amount of electricity, and you need a way to monetize that. So what are your options for monetizing excess electricity? So I'll pose that as an open question, because they will know how you might, if you've got a load of electricity, how can you make money from it? There's one obvious answer, which is the topic of this talk, which is Bitcoin mining. But there are others as well. So I'll just pause for a moment to think if anyone knows how we might solve this problem.
Give it to data centers for the cloud.
Yeah, data centers. Yeah, particularly for AI as well as cloud. So data centers is another option for sure. I try, although Bitcoin mining is a particular type of data center, I distinguish it a little bit because it's very, very specific. Like you can't use a Bitcoin miner for other things. It can just do hashing. But the other ways you could try and monetize this are through industrial processes. So a good example is aluminium smelting. So this is an industrial process that requires a huge amount of electricity, and you get aluminium out of it. A more modern one is producing hydrogen. So you can, again, that's a process that just requires a lot of electricity. But they both have, or all of these have different lead times. They have quite different profiles. So aluminium smelting, you could just imagine you load of aluminium ore, you need to set up that refinery, you need to export it. That's 5 to 10 years, anything or above. That's the time it takes to build the dam in the first place. Hydrogen is a bit quicker. It's around 3 to 6 years to set that up. And even an AI data center, you might be surprised, that takes a minimum of 2 years. And the reasons for that are they need very reliable power source and a high bandwidth data connection, and need to move all of the servers there with all the necessary security. So Bitcoin mining is quite different. So a Bitcoin miner, it just looks like a little old desktop computer. So if you've ever seen one, they're about this big. I think we've lost I talk too much maybe, and we've lost the connection. And you can put them in containers, and they can just be transported directly to you can co-locate them with the energy source. So, and you can set that up as soon as you can get that container there. Your presentation stopped. Share desktop. Okay. Yeah, we're back. Yeah, so a Bitcoin mining rig can be transported there as quickly as you can ship it, really. There's still a lead time to that, talking minimum of 6 months. And you can ship it away again just as easily. So it's a very attractive option to start recuperating some of your costs and get revenue quickly. There's also a issue about pollution with all of these three. So you can imagine an aluminium smelting operation, how much pollution that's going to affect the local environment. Even with the AI data center, which is quite clean, they still typically use a lot of water. And the reason why you can't recycle that is they need to evaporate it. So even an AI data center doesn't come without its concerns. That's quite different from Bitcoin mining. It's completely clean technology. So it's just like a Tesla. It takes electricity, it does something with it. It produces new Bitcoins and heat. There's no particulate emissions. It's not bad for the environment in any way. And so just from the perspective of energy offloading, Bitcoin mining is a unique proposition. It's attracted to renewables. It's attracted to places where the energy might be intermittent. You might have more solar during the day and at the night, or you might have periods of high wind, and it can turn off and on in an instant with zero marginal cost. That's not true of something like an AI data center. It has to be on the whole time. So yeah, this is why I like to think of it as we're in a second great transformation of Bitcoin. So it transformed the financial markets to begin with. Now it's transforming the energy sector. And I personally am involved in this. So I have Bitcoin miners in Ethiopia. I'm very proud of that because the money that I spend on the operational costs, I'm buying their electricity. That goes directly to Ethiopia Electric, and they're using that to connect their grid in rural areas. So my Bitcoin mining machine not only gives me clean, renewable Bitcoins, it also helps the connection of Ethiopia's grid. And this year alone, Ethiopia Electric, I think, have made over $200 million just from Bitcoin mining. And I'm very happy to pay them that. You might have thought batteries are a good answer, but fun fact that all the batteries in the world would have 0.3% the capacity of this one dam's energy for 1 year. So batteries, they're okay on small scales and for short periods of time, like industrial sized batteries are only good for around 4 hours. So unfortunately, they're not really a viable solution in these cases. Okay, but it's not just a problem or let's say an opportunity in Ethiopia. It's also closer to home. So I was reading the paper a couple of weeks ago, and I saw this article. The UK spends £1 billion a year curtailing wind farms. That's switching them off. And the reason for that is we have agreements with these wind farm operators to buy their electricity, but there's times when we're just generating far too much. So we have to pay them despite the fact that they're turned off.
Well, what does curtailing mean?
It just means stopping. Yeah, stopping them, and we'll put them on later. And we're spending £1 billion a year doing that. It's a huge amount of money. We could, if we're a bit more progressive, like Ethiopia or Texas or other parts of the world, we could invite Bitcoin miners to come over and just buy that electricity. You can locate them directly next to these wind farms whenever you need to. Whenever we've got too much electricity for domestic use, we just start mining Bitcoin. Even if we were mining Bitcoin at a loss, we would still recuperate some of this money. So there's a huge opportunity here in the UK. But unfortunately, it's not a very good, it's not a very regulatory friendly environment for Bitcoin mining. Other places are. So I mentioned Texas. They have a deregulated grid. So the Texas grid is separate from the grid of the rest of the USA. And they're much more open to Bitcoin mining. And now, not only do they have some of the most reliable and cheap electricity, they also have disaster recovery agreements. So if there's a hurricane, the power will get diverted from these miners to domestic use. So it's also a very useful tool, even for developed countries to manage their load, balance their load, and also for disaster relief. A very interesting tool, just from the perspective of energy. Just pause there for any thoughts or comments or questions. Okay, so I'll now switch gears a bit and just talk about Bitcoin. So forget about the energy sector. Let's just look at what Bitcoin offers in some statistics here, some of my favorites. So the market cap of Bitcoin at the moment is $1.9 trillion. It's still only a fraction of what gold is worth, but it's incredibly large market. And most of crypto is Bitcoin. So the market cap of Bitcoin is 65% the market cap of all crypto combined. So it's easy to ignore because I think sometimes it's a bit boring. You can't do much. It's just store of value. It's not exciting as some of these new blockchains, but that's not what the market thinks. The market has placed a very, very high value in Bitcoin. We could talk at length for why that is, but one of the fundamental things that sets it apart is proof of work mining. It ties Bitcoin to the real world in a way that no other blockchain is. And even though 95% of coins have been issued already, still every year, $16 billion worth of Bitcoins are mined. So there's a huge industry there of Bitcoin miners, and it's completely global. In every country in the world, you'll find Bitcoin miners. Yep.
So when new coins, like when you mine Bitcoin, does like new coins go into supply?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. So if you're a Bitcoin miner, you do lots of hashing. If you find the right solution, you get a new block. And in that, the block reward is composed of two things. There's the subsidy, which are new coins, and transaction fees. So all the transaction fees in the block you get to have as well. The subsidy started off as 50 Bitcoins. So in the beginning, every block you got 50 new Bitcoins. Now it halved every 4 years, and now it's got to the point where you get 3.125, but each one's worth $100,000.
So when does it stop? Like when does the supply release?
Yes, so the coin scheduling, you do the calculations and you get to around the year 2100. So yeah, 2100. All the coins will be issued, but mining will still be a viable business because you get the transaction fees. So we'll move into a period where the transaction fees are so valuable that we'll continue to mine. So at the moment, I think the transaction fees are around 5% of the reward you get, but that will increase over time.
I wanted to ask, like, right now, you're saying it's 5% and 95% is the reward.
Yes.
And like for the next 10 years, so it'll be like maybe 50-50.
Yes. Exactly.
And so like the ROI right now, for example, I don't know what it is, maybe it's 2 years for the investment. And later it will be 4 years or 5 years.
Yeah.
Because the reward will go down gradually.
Yes, so yeah, you're actually quite right, because the return on investment of a Bitcoin mining machine in Ethiopia is around 2.5 years. You'll make your money back, which is actually a very good investment. And things like that are going to change over time. It'll depend on the global cost of energy, the coin price, the amount of coins you're being rewarded. But the point is, even in bad case scenarios where the price goes down, it will still be profitable for some people to mine Bitcoin. So there'll always be miners where energy is particularly cheap and there's not many other people competing with you, that it will become viable to do it. So it's a very resilient system in this regard. And in terms of renewables, 40% of Bitcoin mining, energy use of Bitcoin mining comes from renewables. That's much higher than the global average. Not quite as high as the UK. We have quite a lot of renewables in the UK, but the average country is about 20%. And this is set to increase to around 70% in 2030. For the reasons we've just been talking about, it's a very natural match for renewable projects. So yeah, I'd encourage you to look at this reference. It's a very authoritative paper on the subject, written by well, the principal researcher was Andrew Noy-Miller in Cambridge, and here it goes into detail about all the statistics of the energy composition and where these things are located. Very comprehensive report. And you know, I think it took everyone by surprise. People weren't expecting this. It's a kind of surprising thing. You know, you might think, well, the cheap energy is going to be coal-fired power stations in, I don't know, North Asia. But that's not the case. They're actually more expensive than renewables. Okay, and what about Bitcoin in terms of capabilities? So this is just a little fun slide, really. This is the ranking of the top DeFi platforms in the world. No surprise that Ethereum is number 1. But you might be surprised that Bitcoin is number, was it 4? And we were talking a minute ago about lending and staking in Bitcoin. And the interesting thing I find is that this has changed in the last 12 months. So before Bitcoin wasn't even on the table. There's a few reasons we can go into that, but there's been a few technical innovations that are enabled DeFi on Bitcoin. Also more entrance into the market, but people are realizing the power of zero knowledge proofs that you can validate on chain. There's lots of great L2s out there nowadays. And there's kind of this perception in the Bitcoin market that, look, Bitcoin always had the market cap, but Ethereum had all the DeFi. But now we're seeing the DeFi going over to Bitcoin, and then that really strengthens the Bitcoin value proposition and leaves us thinking, well, what is the reason for Ethereum anymore if we can do a lot of this on Bitcoin? Okay, so it's a very interesting tool from the financial world. Now let's talk about the provenance of things. So let's start with banknotes. This is a $1 bill, but it could be similar with a banknote throughout the world. So what do you have here? You have a few interesting things. You have a unique serial number for every single bill. That's that here. You have the year it was produced. Sorry, you can't see it very well. You have the facility where this was produced. It's I can't remember which one this is. That might be Chicago, the federal facility. And you have two things that indicate where it was on the sheet, because you have a big sheet of bills. It was sheet position 2, and the faceplate number is B11, I think. So that's the actual what you're stamping with. And for authenticity, you have a treasury seal. So this is everything you have on a banknote. Now, this is quite different to a Bitcoin, right? What do we have on a Bitcoin? Nothing like this. We have the amount of Bitcoin. We have a unique serial number, which is a UTXO. And we have a kind of way to authenticate this. We can see that this has appeared on the blockchain, which is secure by proof of work. So I'd say in Bitcoin, you have authentication, a unique number, and a denomination. The kind of faceplate and serial are not really relevant. Well, no, these are kind of like which mining machine produced it. But we don't have the year it was produced, and we don't have the, oh no, actually we do have the year, that's fine. We don't know where it's produced. This is a big thing that we don't have in Bitcoin. So there's some things that are similar, but we don't have all of the information that we would typically want on a banknote. So what attributes could we assign to a Bitcoin? We tag them with? So I've talked about energy. So obviously the use of renewables when producing a Bitcoin could be important. Also carbon reduction. So there's lots of, there are now companies that specialize in, particularly in Texas, when you have an oil field, it releases a load of methane called flare gas. And they typically just burn it into the atmosphere because you have to get rid of it. That releases a huge amount of pollution. Instead, you can turn that into energy. You can put a generator there and mine Bitcoins with them. And that reduces the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So that's when this type of Bitcoin mining actually becomes a carbon negative. We're lowering atmospheric carbon. But it's not exactly renewable, we're using gas, but it's certainly good for the environment. The efficiency of the machines, they're getting more efficient every year. It's kind of, I'd like to think of that as like on every electrical appliance, you have like A, B, C, D. We could do the same for Bitcoin mining machines. The use of waste heat in Finland, they capture this heat in literally sand bricks. So bricks of sand that they put in these mining facilities, and then they move them around to heat municipal buildings. The recycling of e-waste, there is an e-waste concern with Bitcoin mining, just like with every piece of technology, but the e-waste is around 1% the energy of the lifetime of a mining machine. Do you finance grid expansion like our dam in Ethiopia? Do you offer emergency grid support? So all of these attributes, they're things that I would like to know when I bought a Bitcoin. If I knew that a Bitcoin was providing emergency grid support in disaster situations, I'll be really proud to have that Bitcoin, or at least I prefer to buy that Bitcoin over another one. So these are all attributes that have some value to some people. Also, the location of the mining machine. So some people might prefer to know that their Bitcoin was mined in the USA, for example. There might even in the future be regulations that are favorable to that. For example, we could imagine there might be less capital gain tax for locally produced coins, that type of thing. The jurisdiction and the exact so that might be something like the EU, and then the exact location, so the specific data center where our coin was produced. In terms of governance, it's also important to know who your miners are. So just like we have KYC and AML for normal financial transactions, we should be assured that the mining facility wasn't bought by the proceeds of crime or wasn't operated by a rogue state or something like that. But they're big businesses, right? They're quite easy to see, and it's easy to target. Like, they don't want anything to risk their enterprise, right? Because they're really in the physical infrastructure and energy game. They're not really in the crypto business. So they usually try and go above and beyond to be as legit as possible. And then things like local philanthropic initiatives and ethical employment practices. So all this type of thing. Now let's look at other industries. So forget about Bitcoin for a second. Here are 3 industries where we have similar concepts of sustainable assets: gold, diamonds, and bonds. So these are all well-established initiatives. I'm particularly interested in the diamond one, actually. I love this company called Fairmine. They were founded by a very impressive Colombian lady in partnership with the Fair Trade Organization. And if you are a gold mine that has good ethical and environmental standards, you invite them to come and they inspect your facility. And if it passes, they issue you with a certificate, valid for 1 year. And then your gold will trade at a premium in the open market. So people will pay 2 to 4% more for your certified gold. It doesn't mean that the gold in your attic is worth any less. That's still gold. You can still melt it down and sell it at the base rate on the open market. It just means that there's some gold. We have a very strong provenance record, and there is a market for that. And I think there's often gold and Bitcoin have very close analogies. There's a good evidence. That's why there should also be something similar to Bitcoin. Diamonds are a bit more tricky because every diamond is different. So it's very hard to compare certified versus non-certified diamonds, but it's almost the rules to play now. If you're a jeweler like Pandora, I think they will only deal with certified diamonds. I'll just pause there again in the comments. If you've ever bought a diamond or been given a diamond, you can even take a look at your certificate and you'll be able to validate that online. Okay, so what do we do? And we're essentially trying to become the fair mind standard of Bitcoin. So here's like a high level conceptualization. So at the top, we have fossil fuel miner. They're mining Bitcoins, being rewarded with new coins, and these can be bought and sold on the ledger. Are the foods count. And we have a sustainable miner. And these Bitcoins we can trace from the source. And even when they're sold once or sold twice, as long as we have a provenance record back to the certified miner, then we can be sure that they've come from an ethical and sustainable miner. So that's at a high level what we're doing. And there's 2 aspects we need to solve. One is the issuance of these coins. So how do we identify specific coins from a specific miner? And the second is how do we track them as they're traded on the ledger? So we'll deal with both of those separately. The first is dealing with newly minted coins in the Coinbase transaction. So you might know that that's what the minting transaction is called. Now there are fundamentally there's 3 different ways you can mine Bitcoin. First, you can be a solo miner. This is very hard nowadays, but it's still possible. So there's still people who are just mining in their bedrooms and they find a new block. Like there's often fun examples of that going on. And people think of that as a lottery. It's actually more profitable than buying a national lottery ticket to do that. Your expected return. Yeah.
Isn't that like 1 in 100 if you're like a solo person?
It's harder than that. So I mean, 1 Bitcoin is worth $100,000. So you're going to be rewarded with 3.1 of those. Let's say that's $300,000. So in principle, that's the typical operational cost you need to get there. But you might be spending $1 a day mining. So that you might expect to be rewarded in every 300,000 days, but of course you might just get lucky and find it. So, so you can do solo mining, or which is much more common, is to mine as part of a pool. That's where you pool all of your resources together, and whenever you find a valid block, you share the reward. This is one interesting thing is how to audit that, and there's a very simple way you can do using shares. I won't go into that, but each machine can generate shares, which are a small, they're like a less difficult version of a block reward. And then you can work out which one of us was hashing. Like you did 50%, I did 10%, Tammy did 5% or something like that, and you distribute the reward accordingly. So that's quite a well-established, sophisticated methodology. And there's kind of 2 ways that can happen. It can either be paid out directly from the block reward. We call these non-custodian pools because the operator never touches your coins. They just go directly to the pool members from the block reward. Or you can be a custodian pool, which is much more common because it's technically easier actually, where the block reward just get paid directly to the pool operator, and from them, they give it to the different payees. But either way, it's actually not too difficult to identify the newly mined Bitcoins associated with each miner. Either it's direct from a solo or a non-custodian pool, or it's just one hop after that with a pool operator giving it to me. So this is the much more elegant way of doing it. I prefer, then you don't have to deal with an extra step, but hey ho. And there's been a big rise in the popularity of non-custodian pools, and in particular a pool called Ocean. They're becoming more and more popular because people just prefer this. It's easier to, it's more conceptually clean. It's a bit harder because you have to pre-calculate how much reward you're going to give each person. You can't do it after the fact. Whereas this one, you can first get the block reward, and then you can work out, well, how much did everyone contribute? So this one, you have to kind of do it a bit more up to date. It's a bit harder, but totally possible. And as an example, here is a block mined by Ocean Pool. So this is on the bitcoin.com block explorer. You can see this is a Coinbase transaction. So it's the first transaction block. The input is always 0. The output is 3.126 something. So that's interesting. 3.125 of that will be the subsidy, and the rest will be the fees on top. And you can see here there's like 10 and then plus 46 outputs here. So they're paying directly to the different people in the pool. And you can see this is quite good because even if you don't have a much smaller hash rate, you can see that this person just got $3,000 out of this, whereas the top one got like 30. And yeah, if you want, you can look up my little mining machine. It's all completely open and transparent. There's no passwords. You can see what every pool member are doing. You can see how much shares they calculate. If you want, that could be quite a little fun thing to click on. It's probably not going to. I share this screen. Is that easy? Come back to it. It's okay. Let's not worry about it. It's anyway. You can see exactly what each miner are doing, what your neighbors are doing, etc. So it's completely transparent. It's one thing I quite enjoy about Ocean. Okay, so that deals with coin issuance. Next is how do we track these coins as they're traded on the ledger? Because we're giving preference to some type of coins compared to others. Well, the easiest thing is if you just have a simple model where every transaction has one input, one output. It's clear here that if this was the issuance transaction, in the first transaction I traded, it just has one input and one output. These are our little tags. And the same with the second one. It's conceptually very clear. Now, this isn't how most transactions work. You usually want to have an extra input where you might be paying the fee. You might have multiple outputs or something like that. Nevertheless, this is still a very useful workflow if you design it like that. And there are many use cases that do just buy the coins to hold them. And the most popular are large funds. So people like BlackRock, people like Vanguard, people like Bitwise, they buy Bitcoin, they hold it, and they sell exposure to that to their customers in the forms of ETFs and other things. So even just this is a very, very realistic profile of a transaction. Okay, but what happens if we had more complex transactions with multiple inputs and outputs? Well, in that case, we can use something called ordinal theory. And some of you might have heard of ordinals inscriptions, which are a type of NFT. So this really kickstarted the DeFi movement on Bitcoin. But I'm more interested in the protocol behind that, which is it's called ordinals because it's a way to order every Satoshi from the moment it's minted all throughout its lifetime. And it's a very simple protocol. It's almost brain dead. It's exactly what you would expect. It just means in every transaction, you can order the Bitcoins in the input or Satoshis, and you match them with the order of the output. It's no more complex than that. So in this example, we had an input with 6 certified Bitcoins and 4 non-certified. These got turned into 10 Bitcoins. These are mixed, 40% uncertified, 60% certified. But we can still untangle these because the first 6 Bitcoins of these we can map then back to this original input here. And even if we split up the outputs, we can still track those Satoshis, and we have the 4 that are uncertified. So it's just a way of matching Satoshis in the input and output. But it's very useful in our context because it gives you a way to identify Satoshis over time as they're propagated in transaction. So yeah, I think ordinal theory is a really underappreciated protocol. In fact. Okay, so even if pure and certified and uncertified inputs get mixed up, we can always disentangle them. It's just a bit more complex. Okay, and that's it. So we put this together and made a product. This is where it gets a bit more startup-y. So there's 3 aspects to our product. There's a certification service for miners. There's a verification portal on our website, and there's an API for businesses to integrate. So this is what certification looks like. We go and inspect your mine, just like Fair Mine for gold. And if you pass our inspection, if you're using a renewable energy source, we give you a certificate of accreditation. There's already well-established standards for how to audit the energy source, the ISA 3000 standards. And if, it's valid for 1 year, then whenever you mint a Bitcoin, we identify that as it appears on the ledger, and we track it as it's traded throughout its lifetime. So yeah, that's how we serve our miners, who are really our partners. Then you can verify these certificates on our online portal. So if you just go to bitroots.io, you'll find this portal here where we've kind of taken this from the diamond certification principles, where you can just type in your ID and it will display your certificate here. So that's if I want to buy a certified coin, I can double check here that it's really certified. And this has all been built. But what we're still building is the API. And here I've modeled it on you might be buying some coins on an exchange like Coinbase or something. And you as end users might want to buy some certified renewable coins. And here I've just called it green BTC. I don't really like the phrase green, to be honest. But let's say you want to buy some certified coins. It will say, this transaction ID contains certified coins which are verified by Bitroots, our platform. If you want, you can click on that and it will tell you a bit more information. So this was a certified green Bitcoin that was 3 hops away from the Coinbase. And if you want, you can even view that certificate. So this is our provenance record for each Bitcoin. And I want to emphasize that this is completely off-chain. So Bitroots doesn't write anything on-chain. We're not changing anything to do with the Bitcoin ledger. We're just providing more information. It's kind of like if you bought an expensive piece of art, it also gives you the transaction history of all the previous owners. And that's actually how they know that like a Picasso is a Picasso. They don't really rely on analyzing the lines. They analyze the audit history of how it was bought and sold. Okay, so that's the product that I'm currently building. And just to recap and to give us next steps. So we've talked about Bitcoin mining as clean energy. I've hopefully convinced you of that. And it has unique properties that make it ideal as an offloader for renewable projects. So it's a very important tool in the renewable energy transition. It's by far the most popular crypto, and it's getting even more dominant year on year. So it's something that you should take very seriously. And we've developed a provenance platform for Bitcoin, which is the first of its kind. And it relies on physical inspection. That's the only way I think you can really be sure that you're getting the renewably mined coins. Identifying the Coinbase and tracking using ordinals. There's a few things I didn't talk about in this talk, but happy to talk about later, which is how do you audit a mining facility? It's not that difficult. Who our competitors are, how much is a clean Bitcoin worth above the base price, and you can even link Satoshis on the ledger to individual machines. So that's kind of quite similar to the banknote. But yeah, those are interesting topics. I've also written some blogs on those if you're interested. How can you guys get involved? So, well, firstly, I really like more connections in the industry. So if any of you know any Bitcoin miners, ideally who use renewable energy, but even just freshly mined coins traded at premium, I'd love to be put in contact with them. Maybe I can help them get more money for their product. Do you know any funds or institutional investors to talk to? So people like the BlackRocks of the world, that may be on a bit of a smaller scale. Have I missed any competitors? And do you know any investors? Because like every startup, I want investments so I can build as quickly as possible. Also very open to academic collaboration. So I've written a white paper on this, but I haven't published that. I think there's a lot of interest to this academically, maybe case studies, but also explaining how that theory works. I don't have the time to pursue this right now, so if anyone's interested in turning this into an academic article, that would be very appealing to me as well. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's the end of the talk.